must be a class.
Can't hear you.
Well, welcome. I think this is the 7th, maybe the 8th week of Barbara's series of classes that she's called The Art of Shifting Consciousness. And since she is off celebrating on the other side of the world her long and wonderful marriage to John, she's asked some of us to fill in on the Mondays that she's gone. And here I am. My name is Rowe. I'm a licensed practitioner here at the center. And here at the center, we start everything with a spiritual mind training. So I invite you to just relax into your chairs. Maybe focus on your breathing. Become present in this moment. For what I know is there is only one infinite and absolute source of all life, of all love. It is life, it is love. It is that very presence and essence that is within each person here, within each person everywhere, with every plant, within every animal, within the planet itself. There is this one that I call God. And here we are. We have come together. And what I know is we come together as this divine energy, this creative force, the spirit of light and love, that we will share what it is we know about the 4 agreements. We will share what it is that we have come to use them for in our lives. We will open to the possibility of stretching how we are aware of them, how we are aware of each other, how we are aware of this very life on this planet. For what I know is, when we come together, there is power, there is force, there is creative energy beyond anything that I have ever imagined. And tonight we learn and we share and we share and we learn. And I'm grateful for this. I'm grateful for this center, for this opportunity, for the teaching of science of mind and the teaching of Toltec wisdom. And with this gratitude, I just release these words, I release them into that divine alchemy of love and law, into that infinite mind of God. And I listen, and I hear yes. It is done. And so it is. So there may be a few of you that didn't get the message, but as you came in, I was asking everyone to select one of these phrases that best describes your relationship with the 4 agreements. If you haven't done that, if you could, and if you don't want to, I call this knowing my audience, because when I was in business, I was always taught to know who I was speaking to, so that I would never speak up or down. I would always be right where we all are. Well, here I know we're always one, and we're always in that space. And what I'm going to share tonight is what I call working the 4 agreements, and it's my personal journey with them, how I have used them, and on occasion probably abused them, I admit. And what I like about them is how very much in alignment they are with the science of mind and what the science of mind teaches. And I've pulled out a few phrases to describe that. The science of mind, according to Ernest Holmes, is a philosophy, a faith, and a way of life. Within the book, The 4 Agreements, Don Miguel Ruiz tells us that the Toltec wisdom teaches that the Toltec way is a way of life distinguished by the ready accessibility of happiness and love. And what the wisdom teaches is, and here again, the alignment with science of mind that made it so comfortable for me to bring this into my practice. Everything that exists is one living being. Everything is God. The real us is pure love, pure light. and everyone is endearing. When I look at you, I see me. When you look at me, you see yourself. And it is our agreements that rule our life, which is to say, in the science of mind, we would say it is our beliefs that rule our life. Your word is the power that you have to create. Your intent manifests through the word. It's crucial because of this that we understand the power of the word, what the word is and what it does. In science of mind, we say, change your thought, change your life. And the other one, this one, for some reason, I just overlooked over the last several years, but found it last week. The human mind is like a fertile ground where seeds are continually planted. And one of the metaphors that we use in science of mind teaching is that we plant a seed in the soil, and what we plant is what manifests in our life. So it's really, those are the reasons this teaching, the Toltec teaching, captivated me. And what I'd like to acknowledge right now before I go any further is, I'm not a trained Toltec teacher. I just simply try to live this teaching. But I have been blessed with a friend who is a Toltec teacher. And with her permission, I want to introduce her. Michelle Lowe. She has taught here at the center different workshops, and I am one of her students. I think about 4.5 years ago is when I took her series of workshops. And what she's done tonight is, first of all, I asked her before I stood up here to teach if she felt it was, I guess I asked her permission to teach it my way, even though I was not a trained teacher. So I'm blessed that she said yes. I'm blessed that she's here. She's also brought an assortment of the books related to the 4 agreements, so that beyond this very beautiful little book, there are other readings, other tools.
Lisa, can I say one thing that's significant to me? I studied the Toltec and was a Toltec dreamer and lived the 4 agreements before I ever moved to Asheville. And I came to the center. I guess the rainbow that you see on the sign is what brought me here. And it so resonated with the way I had decided to live my life that I became a person who joined the center and came here often. So we come from different perspectives, but we end up in the same lovely place.
Thank you. I just was technologically distracted because I forgot to put the recorder on. Whatever that may have been about.
I do not want to be recorded.
That could be it. So, and I also thank you very much, Michelle, for sharing that. I also want to invite people, if you do have something to contribute, feel free to raise your hand and contribute, because this tells me that there are quite a few of you who really do understand the agreements and live them, and how each of us has worked them. For me, as a lesson on how I might be able to take them more deeply into my spiritual practice. And so that sharing that's part of the learning, that's part of the growing, that these classes, and I think especially this series of classes on shifting consciousness, is all about. In community, we get to grow faster, expand our consciousness faster. I'm not, did I see a question?
Oh, yeah. I just wondered, is the book called The Power of Belief, is that a Toltec text?
Is that one in the text?
The author of that, Ray Dodd, was the direct apprentice of Don Miguel Ruiz, and many of his apprentices have written books, and that book, The Power of Belief, is one of them.
Okay. So,
Yes, Jim?
Liz, I just wanted to ask, since there's about 25 of us who are unfamiliar or somewhat familiar, if it would be going over.
Oh, I am.
Thanks.
What I did here was, that way I knew that I had people I could call on if necessary, or put on the spot to find out why they thought they were that advanced. Yeah, no, I'm teasing. As a practitioner, I have made the commitment not to put anybody on the spot, actually, as Lucide. So what I am going to say now is, I don't plan to go through all of the details that are in the book. I'm going to focus on the agreements themselves. If the agreements resonate with you, if you're not that familiar with them, in here, there's so much wisdom related to the Toltec way. And what I will share is one of the hooks for me, because words do hook me. One of the hooks was the Toltec say that we are dreaming all of the time, which resonated with a teaching a shaman that I was studying with said, the world is as you dream it. So that, and in the book it also says that our mind is designed to dream. And that pulled me in, because it's what I really knew in my heart was happening, that all of this is an illusion, it is a dream. What is happening, even this is a dream. This is my dream. No. So that was the reason I got pulled into this. So along the, yes, Tom?
Who are the Toltecs and what do they pull into the world?
The Toltecs are an ancient people. The men and women of knowledge is what they're referred to, out of Teotihuacan, Mexico. And I'm going to say going back 1,000+ years ago was when the wisdom was established. It kind of quietly went underground as Cortez and the other troops from Europe invaded Central and South America. So they're among the very advanced civilizations that were here in Mesoamerica and South America when the Western culture came in. Among the others would be the Mayans and the Incans and the Aztecs. So knowing that the world is as I dream it, because that's how I put it, when I learned that we are always dreaming, the other thing that captivated me was there is my personal dream, my personal illusion. And then there is a planetary dream. And the planetary dream is the dream that has been collectively imagined into existence over centuries and eons. And the key is, when we come through the birth canal and land on this plane, in this physical place, we almost immediately are being taught the planetary dream. Our parents, our teachers, our ministers, all of the adults that came before we came are teaching us what they believe. And what they believed is what created the planetary dream. What the 4 agreements did for me was gave me a way to recognize what agreements were mine that I personally had chosen versus what agreements were given to me before I was too aware to make that choice. And that's why the 4 agreements are the tools that bring us to the art of awareness and the art of transformation, which are 2 of the masteries of the 3 in the Toltec. The other one is the mastery of love, the mastery of intent, which is a whole different book. So again, here's the alignment with science of mind. When we learn when you take an inventory of what we're thinking, of what we believe, then we have the possibility of changing them, of transforming our life. So awareness is always the first step, because to change without awareness of what you're changing or what you want to change to isn't very good. So that's how I got hooked to the 4 agreements. What I'd like to do is just kind of plunge right into the agreements themselves. And I did handouts. I am now suspicious that I may not have had enough made. So all these are, it's just rephrasing the 4 agreements. If you can, if you're sitting where you can share them with someone, or you already know the agreements, then we have the possibility of, well, actually, no, there's always more than enough, because part of it is that we are one, and we are connected. So if you don't have the piece of paper in hand, know that someone near you does. If you don't have the knowledge in your mind, know that someone near you does. And I will be saying, I will go over these verbally. It's just for some people, it's easier to grasp if they see it. The first agreement, be impeccable with your word. Is everybody okay? I'm going to ask, what does that mean to some of you? Because when I first began this journey, this practice, I shied away from being impeccable with your word. And I shied away from it because the word impeccable meant something very specific to me. And I knew there were areas in my life that I was not impeccable. So I did not want to go there. So having shared that, what does impeccable mean, Robbie?
Here, I think it means say only words that you will not regret later on.
Thank you. Yeah. Jim?
To me, it means living your life with integrity.
Yeah.
To me, it's like doing what I said I was going to do, like following through with what my words intended to me.
I would say for me, it means living in the present and really observing what I am saying and making that matter.
I don't know your name.
I'm Lee.
Lee, thank you very much. Any other? Yeah, Jim?
Being very careful before you talk as to you are sure of the meaning of your words. Just don't toss out the
Actually, a perfect strategy. A perfect strategy to be impeccable, yes.
I've kind of changed the way I think about this. It was, when I first read the book, it was just trying to be honest with myself and honest. And since I came to the center, I mean, we're always talking about what you think and what you're saying and everything, so it took on a whole different meaning, because I'm trying to be in truth. So it's a little bit stronger now that I know the concepts that are coming to mind.
I think Wayne?
I was just reading kind of the middle part of it, not to speak against yourself. So there's it'd be best for me to affirm my best qualities rather than, either put myself down or put anyone else down.
Actually, Wayne read ahead, and that's, and thank you, because that brings us back to what the Toltec mean by impeccable. And if you do read the book, it gives you the derivation of the word impeccable, impeccability, and it means without sin.
Sin.
And sin is simply going against yourself.
I like that.
That's, so when I got over my freak out thinking, oh, I'm not impeccable, I can't go there, yes. Yeah.
I noticed that when I try to be really conscious of what I'm saying, if I'm not sure how to actually word something, I'm finding myself just not saying anything at all, just stepping back. Whereas it's real easy to quick make judgment or tell the person something, and so I think that's a real shift for me in awareness and transformation about the truth, because I'm not clear about it, so therefore I shouldn't be putting it out until I'm real clear in my own thinking.
And see, that's exactly what this particular agreement is about. Making an agreement with yourself that whatever you speak is in alignment with who you are. And this takes me back to, we are light and love. So by being impeccable with my words, I choose words that affirm that. And that's not necessarily the way that I've always lived my life. And it's not the way I always find my words coming out now. Do any of you have beliefs, either current or from the past, that would have been speaking against you?
Of course.
Dan?
I think, I don't know, when I was younger, I was super negative or more than now. I'd always be like, carry something like, you suck, this sucks. The word sucks came out of my mouth a lot.
And Carrie's smoking.
After a while.
Been there, heard that.
Yeah, well, even now, I find myself, it's one, I was formulating a question for you. There's old programs that are running that, like in conversation with my spouse, my wife, these things come up, it's just against what I would do and, or say. And it's out of my mouth before something she'll say will trigger me, and it will bring up my, and I'll say something that is not in alignment with things I know to be true. And while it's happening, I realize, this is a projection, it's a Course in Miracles. This is in alignment with that too.
Yes.
Anger without projection is impossible. And I know what's going on, but this program is there in my face, and it's almost out before I have any conscious awareness of it.
And if I'm hearing you correctly, what you're saying is you're reacting to something your spouse, which tells me that you've jumped us right ahead into the second agreement, which is don't take anything personally.
Yeah.
Because that, in my experience, that's where my buttons get pushed. And that, I should say, pushing my button is taking it personally. And that's where the emotions come up. That's where the fear, the anger, the sadness, all of those emotions that are not light and love come up.
Yeah.
Yes. So the practice that helps there would be going back to what Karen said, and before that word comes out of your mouth, if something in your solar plexus, or for me, if something's not feeling right, it's often kind of a heat wave. And if I start to feel that, I pause. How many of you were here on Sunday when David Washington spoke? One of the things I loved that David did is in the middle of his talk, he was giving a series of different things that would be done, and sometimes the appropriate action was to be still. And then there was this wonderful silence. And that's being impeccable. He was waiting for the word to come, or words to come, that were going to express what he really meant, what he really felt. I mean, that actually, for me, I just love it when I'm in a conversation or in a presentation where there is that pause, where we can hear each other thinking, we can hear ourselves thinking, we can actually track. Is it just one thought, one feeling, or am I immersed in a whole bunch of conflicting thoughts, conflicting beliefs, conflicting agreements that are in the end are going to put me in a turmoil? Yes, Kim?
With that, it for me has created a bond with him that he's not perfect and that his presentation wasn't canned. It wasn't something he had done before. It was organic, and he was responding to us as we were responding to him. And it created that silence, created that closeness, when in fact, when we're worried about how we look or how we appear, that we are the professional that knows all the answers. When you set that aside, and someone asks a question and you go, I don't really know that answer, all of a sudden your audience is eating out of your hand because they understand that you don't put yourself above them. And it was, I agree with you, that was really profound.
There is a richness in silence that we can all find ourselves in, is the way I think of it. You know, that's when there's silence, we're all there. It isn't just one person. Yes, Michelle?
One of the things that my teacher said to us often is mind your own attention.
Yes, yes, yes. So,
I'm sorry,
Darcy?
yes, thank you. I was just gonna say that, I've been learning to be more and more impeccable with my word, because growing up, I used to live very, very small and insecure, and I would do and say things that were deceitful in ways to make myself look larger. But as I've come into this awareness of science of mind and how we create our realities, I've learned that it's become very, very important not only to think, act, and say things in an impeccable way, because they're going to influence your future. And I'm building a much larger space for myself by using impeccable words, impeccable thoughts, impeccable actions.
And I just want to caution you to remember impeccable means not against yourself. And I'm going to go back to when you referred to your childhood,
Okay?
when you felt you weren't impeccable. A lot of the agreements that we bought into, not knowing we were buying into them, were not at all impeccable. I remember some of them that I grew up with. And I think I have it pretty clean. I grew up thinking I was fat. I grew up thinking that I was clumsy. I grew up thinking that my brother was handsome and I was ugly. I grew up thinking that I couldn't dance because I wasn't cute. I could go through a whole series of things that were so against me, but I believed them.
Right, I
And that
understand.
seems to be what you're.
Well, but the thing is that they didn't resonate well with me. They didn't feel good. And as I'm becoming more aware, I'm practicing the laws of signs of mind, things are feeling really good. They're resonating with me. I feel like I'm expanding in really positive and meaningful ways. So that's where I say impeccable, because it feels so right, it feels so good. I can say something one way and not feel good and be immediately aware of it and be able to correct it, where in the past, I used to blame everything on circumstance, people, things, and now I understand it's me. It's me.
It's always,
It's all about me.
It's my dream.
Just real quick, David himself said on Sunday that he mentioned his own silences, and he said, it's okay, he said, I'm just waiting for God to tell me what to say next. So that's where the silence was. He was listening to God or something inside him to get him the right.
it's not something inside of him, it is the God within that he was waiting to hear.
Yeah.
Yes, but in the silence where he was listening, we could listen with him and connect.
Yeah.
There was nothing between the God in him and the God in us,
Mhm.
which is the one God.
Yeah, so it's very interesting. That's why his silences were there. He was
Yes.
waiting for God to speak to him and everybody else.
Any other ideas around the concept of impeccable and how it either has played or not played in your life? Yes, Amy.
Earlier in my life, I was a very angry person, and usually there'd be no filter, and it would just come out. And as I was able to see myself as that person, I took the opposite extreme and started to hide and get real quiet and small because I didn't like myself. So for me, impeccable was trying to find that balance between having a voice and having a correct voice for myself.
I like that, yes, having a voice and having a correct, yeah, I like that, thank you, yes.
I keep thinking in my head about Julia, about with impeccable that, you know, as it says, of course, not using the words against yourself, of course, it doesn't mean that you're perfect, you know, that you are doing your best, but I know that when we really started a practice of trying to be, you know, building, you know, to speak the truth and be the truth in everything, in the very, very best, of course, you know, it was just, there were patterns of things that, as soon as I really started working on that, that was just things that were happening that before I even realized it, would be like, my gosh, I just said something that wasn't really honest. And then I would berate myself though, and terribly, you know, and that was the constant thing, and that's why I keep reading this part about me, that's the part that I wasn't getting. And then it was just like, I got to where it's like I couldn't focus on that practice, because it was driving me crazy, because I was going crazy because I wasn't doing it perfectly. You know?
That word perfect, yes, okay, perfection not in the sense that here at Science of Mind we say that we are whole, complete, and perfect, but perfect in that way we agreed upon it at some point earlier in life. That way that said there must be a specific form that this action takes. And we would, we would just imprison ourselves. Right, I imprisoned myself. Yeah, that drive to perfectionism that is pervasive. I know it was pervasive in myself, and I witnessed it around, is probably, to me, the most insidious and the most dangerous and the most self-deprecating of all of the things that we could do. I'm very grateful. I'll share one of my stories. I'm infinitely grateful. Years ago, when perfectionism was driving me, and it was driving me to never finish projects. It was driving me to procrastinate. It was driving me to work 10, 12, 14-hour days. And I'm grateful because I had a manager who came into my office one day, closed the door, and of course, right there, I was immediately, oh God, I'm not perfect. It's my job. He sat there, he looked me in the eye, and he said, listen, perfectionism makes me so nervous, stop.
Really?
Yes, and it was like, I mean, such a gift he gave me. Now, I'm not saying that I woke up the next morning, all of those decades of being a perfectionist were gone, but it opened my eyes. So I'm gonna share further part of that story. I sat there after he left, and I said, oh my goodness, I only expected myself to be perfect. What an arrogant, self-centered way to look at the world. I accepted mistakes. I accepted all kinds of behavior from people around me because they were free to choose and I was free to choose. But how arrogant of me to think that I could accomplish something that I didn't expect of anyone else. It just really, so it was a huge gift he gave me. And I still work on it. Yes, Jim.
One of the most debilitating beliefs that I was, agreements that my family raised me with was you are never, ever supposed to ask anyone for help. And, you know, as you go through life, and when I think about that, that's such an Anglo way of being. And I remember later on in my later years, a friend of mine was encouraging me at one point to ask my family for help on something. I said, I can't do that. You just don't understand. You just don't do that. And she said to me, you know, Ginny, you help people all the time. And how does that make you feel when you help people? And I said, oh, it's very meaningful for me. And they said, well, you are depriving people of that opportunity when you don't allow them, if you need help, to ask for help. And, it started making a little bit more sense, but when I think in this culture about how prevalent that is, to never, that you're never supposed to ask for help.
Yeah, that's my take on that, because I am still working on that one. I'm practicing. With practice, if I practice the right thing, sometimes I get better. Yeah. My take on the asking for help, and especially as I weigh it against both the science of mind, but I think especially the wisdom in the four agreements, is not asking for help is not allowing community to happen. It's not allowing unity to happen. It's not allowing that one God, that one mind, that one spirit, the light and love of the world to shine through.
It's not allowing love.
That's, there you go, yeah. Tom?
Yes.
Okay.
To me, impeccability has more to do with just thinking what I really want to happen, and because everything that I ever thought manifested. So if I wasn't impeccable with my thought forms, then it came to get weird. So, I mean, I don't think anybody ever understands my word per se, because I don't believe you can really communicate your truth in words. But in terms of magic and manifesting, you can be impeccable to yourself at least.
That's the key, impeccable to yourself, to your dream, to who you are, not to what you have been told to be by someone else. That's, you're right, it's knowing the truth of who you are, what you want, where your heart lies, where your path is. When you stay there, the manifesting occurs, yeah, thank you, Tom. So I'm going to, unless there's some more questions, I'm gonna move us along into the one that into the second agreement, which is do not take anything personally. And at this point, do not take anything personally, the second one and the third one, which is do not make any assumptions. Those were the two that I started with. Because I've already shared that I shied away from the impeccable. But I looked at the personally and the assumptions and said, I can do these. I can work here. This is a space I know. Well, in a recent conversation with Michelle, she pointed out to me that that's because those two agreements are a little bit more outer in terms of their work. They're not all an inside job. So there's a little bit of a buffer. So my journey was to work really diligently on agreement 2 and 3. Just really pull them into my life, into my consciousness, be aware of every reaction and response and whether or not it was in alignment with those two agreements. Yes?
It seems like the first one is all about you, and the second two are making sure it's not all about you.
That's great.
Not exactly, yes, and no.
When it's not all about you, it's such a great distraction. And so, not taking things personally and not making assumptions, those agreements lead us out of drama so that we have space to be impeccable and do our best. But when we're always in drama, blaming, not taking things personally and making assumptions, thinking in our heads that we get it, we create drama over and over again. And I think it's so significant. I can so clearly remember how my life changed when I stopped taking things personally. It was the biggest learning of my life. And it's so important to do it.
It is actually the do not take things personally, that's where all the emotional poison, I believe is the term that's used in the book. That's where all the emotional poison tends to come up and get delivered to everyone around you. That's the key there. It comes up, goes out. I mean, you think it came in because you took something personally, but it's the poison in you that's spreading. And Karen, I saw a hand someplace.
I'm not sure if I lost the thought, but it's coming in.
It'll come and it'll come at exactly the right moment. And leave, it's too easy.
Well, I was just thinking how I think a lot of us have trouble, and I have a lot of trouble with taking things personally, because I was always measuring my self-esteem by what people thought of me, and if they weren't okay with me, then I wasn't okay. And, you know, I just see how that's a practice that I'm, like right now, it's hard for me to just think about myself, about, you know, like the world order disturbs me greatly, and it has for years. And I so focus on it, but now I'm stopping because I think it's making me sick by doing that. And I'm just trying to focus on loving myself. And that's really hard for me because I wasn't trained to love myself. I was trained to serve others and cater to others and notice what they thought of me or whatever. And it's really difficult to separate myself from that and just love myself, because there's a lot, I mean, maybe I can do stuff about it, but right now I need to let go of it, because it's really been a huge burden to me for many years, the world order.
So this is a little bit of a distraction from the 4 agreements, but my take on being hooked by the world order, that is the planetary dream. And if I get hooked on that, I'm not doing my work on me. And I truly believe there's nothing that I can do to change the planetary dream until I have control of my own dream.
But you have to
And that
value, you have to value yourself enough to realize that you're important enough to just focus on yourself and try to help yourself along and love yourself, you know, and be okay with that. You know, so that's what I'm working on in my late years, in 66, you know. It seems like I'm catching up very late. And another thing with what you were talking about earlier, like the perfection thing, you know, I've learned a lot by listening to and practicing progress. Because I'm never gonna be perfect, that's not what I'm about. I'm supposed to just live, evolve, grow, and I don't seek perfection. I seek growing, you know, and trusting in that the Spirit places all that within us so that we can evolve, we can, you know, so I'm working on that too. I don't know that I want to be perfect. You know, I mean, I'm not that concerned about being perfect. Some people are. I mean, some people are really sensitive about that.
I think the whole thing with perfection, we are all perfect.
Yeah.
We are
All right.
Oh, that's,
Yeah, we really are. It's
Yeah.
just the
Yes,
way,
we are.
okay, in this book, it says, one of the master first agreements is the language that we learn growing up. We agree, once we have learned our alphabet and we've learned English, we agree that this word is unfamiliar, that this is W-I-T-H. Even just labeling the letters of the alphabet is an agreement. So that's like a simplified, and then we get into what people define as perfect. And each of us will agree or not agree depending on how we've been brought up, what we've been taught. But we can get hooked. And one of the things that happens, one of the things that happened in my life, I was brought up to be very self-judgmental. That's the perfectionist. I judged myself, and it sounds like we have something familiar, similar there. You know, that self-judgment, that lack of self-esteem, that lack of self-love. Those are amongst the early unconscious agreements that we've made, and those are the agreements that following the 4 agreements will help us ferret out. You know, we can kind of go into our own thoughts, into our own feelings, and one by one, pull out each agreement, each belief that we come up with, and anew, we can make the decision, is this something I really believe? Is this my belief? Or did somebody simply plant that seed in the fertile ground of my mind before I was at a place where I could make a choice?
Okay, so I understand why you went to number 2 first. And I understand what the lady was saying first. Because I think that for me, when I take things personally, I've already allowed people to plant that seed. So I have to go back to number 1. It always, to me, this is like always going back to number 1. Because it's like, I have to change my opinion of what those people say and change the words in my head, speak with integrity in my head before it comes out my mouth. Because those thoughts always come first before they pop out my mouth.
Yes.
So, for me, I cannot go with number 1 first. Because I'm too busy working on number 2.
But I think this leads to the next one, because if you're so busy taking it personally, and you say, oh, that person thinks this or that, then it's real easy to move into making assumptions about what they meant, who they are, who I am in relationships.
Yeah.
And so I can understand what she is saying is that's where all the drama happens, and it seems to go back and forth between if we cannot take it personally and maybe even get back to being impeccable with your word and say, excuse me, could you explain further what you're meaning? And oftentimes when we do that, they say, it was one of the things with my mother. I felt like she had never given me a compliment. And one time she said something about my haircut. And I said, and what do you mean by that? Because I thought it was, you shouldn't have spent the money or whatever, I don't know. She said, oh, it looks really nice. And I said, Mom, do you know that you never said that? And so when I heard those things that felt personal, I would ask for more information. And then that more information allowed me first not to immediately say, this is what that means, which is an assumption. But also, it's back to the truth. You know, what is my truth and what is your truth?
Yeah, Robbie?
Listening to what people are saying, one of the things that's hardest for me in Don't Take It Personally is don't take the positive comments personally either. Because when you have been judged and criticized your whole life and told that you were stupid, you weren't applying yourself or whatever, then when someone does compliment you, you just suck it and hang on to it and just treasure that. And it's so important to you to hear words of compliments and kindness. And so it's hard to not take that personally and say, well, okay, that's nice that you said that, but it doesn't affect the way I feel about myself. That's hard.
One of the great lessons that I learned from Barbara Waterhouse is that when somebody compliments me, now she doesn't put it this way, when someone compliments me, I don't take it personally. I just say thank you. That was a huge, for me, that was just a profound shift in how I received the opinions of others. You know, and for one thing, I used to try to deflect it with all kinds of, well, you know, that's only because I haven't done it. And then it's like, well, wait a minute, they just said something nice.
Yeah.
You know, that's, so when I learned that, just simply say thank you. Look them in the eye, look at them with love, look at them with gratitude and appreciation, but simply say thank you. Because the minute we start to say more, we're taking it personally. It's their opinion, and their opinion is valuable, but their opinion is based on their beliefs, not mine. I saw you.
Oh, no, I'm just
Okay,
thinking.
okay. Andrew?
I have had in the past issues with my mother.
Everybody always your hand has a problem with their mother.
So I'm going to see her in December, and I haven't seen her in 3 years. And I'm gonna be at her house on her turf, and so, I've been doing a lot of thinking about her and my childhood. And it just popped into my head about a month ago that anything that happened when I was a kid had absolutely nothing to do with me.
That's right.
It was about how she was raised, about how she felt about herself or her surroundings or whatever. And it was freeing to realize that it had nothing to do with me, and I can go see her and be fine, you know, and be on her turf and be 60 years old, not be 5 years old or 10 years old or whatever. And it was very, very freeing for me. So I'm looking forward to it, because I haven't seen my folks in 3 years. And they're in their mid-80s, and you know, who knows what's gonna happen tomorrow, so I'm really looking forward to it at this point. And that was a big shift for me.
And it is a huge shift.
Yes.
At the point, when we can reach the point where we truly don't just know the words, but we understand in our heart that what somebody else thinks is none of my business. Because what they think is based on their opinion, based on the agreements that they have made throughout their life. We each tend to assume that everybody has the same set of agreements and rules that we do.
That's the big assumption.
So when we actually reach that point where we can let go and not make ourselves right and someone else wrong, or make them right and ourselves wrong because it works both ways, that is freedom. And this whole series of agreements is the Toltec path to freedom. That ultimately is where this is taking us, to that place of freedom. And freedom means freedom to be who you are, freedom to be who I am, freedom to be how we want to be together, and do it consciously, with consciously chosen decisions. Yeah. Any other comments on taking reason?
Mine is a combination of 1 and 3 because they contradict each other when you're communicating with others. Because it says don't make assumptions. All you have to go on is what they said and how they acted. And if they don't say what they mean, you know.
I do know. I do know. She just assumed I knew what she meant. So actually, I see that it's a couple minutes before 8. So let's take our break now, and when we come back, we're going to come back to that whole idea of assumptions, which is very much tied in to taking it personally and being impeccable. Yes. So thank you. Welcome back. Before we jump into the last half of the class, Breezy wants to make a request.
These are flyers for the craft show. If anybody knows of some places to put them up or to give them to, we have a whole big box out there, but I have a whole bunch here, so if you want some, I'm happy to give them to you.
I just request that you wait until the end of the class to do that, but I know it's good. So moving right along with the 4 agreements, we just finished kind of summarizing and sharing around the one that says, do not take anything personally. And a number of us shared that was very much interconnected with agreement 3, which is do not make any assumptions. The key to the not making assumptions, or I should say the key, what tends to happen is when I am talking to someone, when I'm listening to someone, I will hear, I'm trying to think of something that's been said. I'll hear somebody, I'll go back to compliments. I'll hear somebody say, oh wow, Lisa, you look really great today. And instead of simply saying, thank you, and this I think is especially true when you're much younger and much more dramatic. I'd walk away and I'd say, oh wow, he or she thought I looked really good today. I wonder what that meant. What did they really mean when they said, do I really look good today? I mean, I go into this whole conversation, instead of simply saying, thank you, I'm talking to myself. And if I let some of those hidden beliefs from way back when come up, by the time I get down the street a block or two, I'll say, oh, they didn't really mean it. That's making assumptions. Now, I suspect none of you have ever done that. Well, now, wait a minute. I'm hearing a tone of laughter that tells me, yes, Robbie,
When I
you've
heard
never
that,
done that?
I automatically think, well, only today?
Yeah.
Or I wonder what they want.
That's, yes, yeah. Instead of just accepting the words, we jump to a conclusion. And okay, so where in our lives might this really lead to some misery and conflict? I mean, it can be any part of our lives, but I think relationships. Now, all of life is a relationship, but when we're in relationship with an individual and we start making assumptions instead of communicating, we can get in big trouble as a relationship. You know, we're both still in our own opinion and our own set of agreements. But if I'm in conversation with somebody I'm in relationship with, and it would be like trying to go back to when my husband was alive. Actually, no. I'm going to go back further. I'm going to go back. I was engaged when I was 38 to my best friend at the time, an incredible, amazing young man. And we went along being best friends and doing things together, and there was some kind of little rumbling going on in my solar plexus. So after a year, he said, "Will you marry me?" And I said yes, because I wasn't ready not to have my best friend in my life. And the rumbling continued, and because we came to an agreement. What we agreed is it would be an old-fashioned traditional engagement where we got to know each other better before we started planning the wedding. Well, about 9 or 10 months into that year, and to me it looked like, you know, the finish line was coming up fast. I remember sitting down, and we lived 2 hours apart, so we were kind of, weekends we would travel one way or the other, and then we'd meet partway. And I remember sitting down one weekend and saying, "I'm really curious what marriage looks like to you." And to this, I am so grateful, because what he described was not a relationship I wanted to be in. Because what he was describing was so very different than what we were in as just dating and, you know, engaged. I look back and I said, you know, I could have assumed that what I thought marriage would be was the same for both of us. But some voice, the one that sits right there, said, ask a question. And that's what the whole thing about not making assumptions is. In many cases, it feels like as a culture, we have this general agreement that somehow asking questions is offensive. I'm not sure where that came from. I've never looked at it. I know it's there because I have had people comment to me after we've been in meetings that so-and-so and so-and-so was, gee, they were so obnoxious, they asked so many questions. And I'm sitting there thinking, gosh, I wish I could find my voice and ask even a fraction of those questions. I found it so admirable. So there's something underlying that we often think asking questions isn't good. It's like asking for help. Yes, Wayne.
As you're talking, I was sitting here thinking about my journalism training of asking the 5 W's of who, what, when, where, why, and how. And basically, like in an interview class I began to kind of see like The class itself was an interview. Life is an interview. If you're not asking questions, you are not getting all the information you need.
No, but that's not true.
That's what
But even if you ask the questions, people lie. You said that you would like to cook before we got married, you know?
Well, in my memory, I didn't say that.
Oh, yeah.
No, I think you imagined it, you assumed it. It's what you wanted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You didn't ask the question.
Yes. The other thing I was gonna say, Lisa, was that, the danger for any of us who might, in the past anyway, have, had a tendency to live by what we think other people are thinking about us. Live by what other people are thinking about us and being scared. And the trick is to realize that it's what we think that they're assuming about us. It may or not have anything to do with reality of what they're truly thinking about us, but if we're assuming that, then it's even more dangerous. Yeah.
And that kind of assumption really, to me, goes right down to being impeccable with your word. And it just, it all realized, yes.
I mean, I don't know if I'm getting this a little crotchety, but, I was very wounded as a child and had a really difficult childhood and earlier life and then struggled with a lot because of those beliefs. But I've just gotten to a point where, if those people, like what Ginny was saying, I'm not gonna be worried about too long about what you're thinking about me, because those kind of people feel to me like they don't have much heart for me or whatever, because they've already made all these things and decisions, and I find that as I get older, I just, go, okay, that's their opinion, I just walk away, because I don't, as I've gotten older, I won't tolerate, I just can't seem to tolerate it anymore, either you walk with me and we're friends and we have some honest engaging together, or we don't, and if that's how you're gonna treat me, then I criticize that up, and maybe that's wrong with me, but that's what I do now, as I've gotten older.
First of all, if it feels good to you, you are not wrong.
Okay, well,
Because you're never wrong.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I've had to learn that I have to, because I dragged myself through a lot in my life, because I thought somehow I was ineligible, I had a million things about my so now I just don't do that, and now I think that my sensitivity that way has taught me how to be receptive to things and feel things from people, and when I don't feel that whatever, I just don't seem to wanna stay present. Does that make sense?
It does.
Oh,
And
okay.
actually, what I'm going to, if you really listen to what you just shared,
Yeah,
what you've told me is
yeah.
that at some point, you decided all of those agreements
Yeah,
that you never consciously agreed to, you don't have to keep, because they're not yours. They are not yours. They were embedded in you at some point in your life when you were not you, of course, were always a choice, but you were not consciously choosing that.
yeah, and I would just think that the quality of person that would come to those assumptions about me, as Jimmy was saying, they're not the kind of people I want in my life, because I'm more somebody
Are you
that's.
saying me?
No, well,
What you said.
yeah,
No!
no, what I meant was, your comment touched what you had said about yourself. And I was just saying, if I have people like that in my life now, I used to, my God, just go, put myself through the ringer trying to figure out what was it, what next. Now I just think if those are how the people want to respond, then they're not really people that I probably can be close with, because I'll take the time to get to know you, to talk to you, if you will, with me. If you'll walk with me, I'll walk with you. And if you don't, there's the door. And I've gotten so testy, I say, don't let it hit you in the ass on the way out. Because that's how I feel about it nowadays. I just, and I don't mean, I'm just kind of just my little quirky playfulness. But, I just don't understand why we can't treat each other with love and respect.
That's it. Yeah, that's what this whole teaching is about, that at the core of our being, who we are is light and love. And if we can just peel away all of those agreements that aren't in agreement with who we are at our core,
Yeah,
all that is left is love.
right.
I mean, that's exactly, and part of love is respect. Yes, that's it. And I'm gonna go back to what Tom said about some people lie to us. Well, I'm not going to make that judgment of whether or not they lied to me. What I am going to do is trust my own intuitive God voice within to tell me whether or not what is being told to me is something that is true for me. That's right. That's so it's like if other people want to say things that do not appear to be true, that's their choice. But I can be very present and trust myself and trust what I know in whether or not I believe them, whether or not I let them into my life. And back to what Jim was saying, whether or not I any longer let them dictate what I believe about myself. Yeah.
And of course, the time when you make more of these kind of agreements, these kind of breaking agreements, is when you're a child. And if you're surrounded by people who are a little bit off, then you kind of accept. And because you have no choice, let's say if your parents are kind of sick or this or that, you have no choice but to believe a whole lot of things that are probably not true. So it's interesting, then you really have to work as you get older.
There you go. That's why I call this working before agreements, because it is, in order to master the art of transformation, the art of awareness, practice, repetition, because the agreements that you made when you didn't feel a choice, when you were very young, and you were listening to the adults in your world, the reason they became so ingrained in you is because you heard them repeatedly, you took them into your solar plexus repeatedly, you just bought everything that was being said over and over and over. So it is work to dig in and find them, pull them out and say, you're not mine, and let them go. Just a thought that came to me that when you're working the agreements, when you find an agreement like that, that is no longer one that you honor, that no longer you want in your life, find a replacement agreement and plant that seed. Because if you pull, it's kind of like if, I'm not a gardener, but I have occasionally gotten my fingernails dirty and pulled some actually radishes and that, and carrots and that kind of thing, and green onions. And what happens is when I pull it out, there's a hole in the ground. And it may not be a big hole unless it's a huge carrot, but there's a vacuum there. And when we pull out an agreement, there's a little vacuum. And something's going to fill it. And if we don't fill it with something we choose to put there, that old agreement may sneak back again. And that's the being aware of what's there, being aware of what you want to plant. It's like that's just, it takes discipline, incredible discipline, and that is work. Wish I could tell you it wasn't work, but it, and let me quick ask, do we have any musicians in the room? So when you determine that you're going to, and I'm thinking you've got instrumentalists primarily, when you determine that you're going to play a musical instrument and you want to do it well, what do you do? You make a commitment to practice. And this is kind of leading me into doing your very best. because your very best will vary. And playing a musical instrument, I think, is a very good analogy here. When I first picked up a clarinet when I was in the 3rd grade, I do not want to tell you what it sounded like. I don't know why I so enjoyed it. I know my brother didn't. But I was doing my very best. Because every night I would go to the kitchen, close the door, try to block. The rest of the family wanted it blocked out, and I would practice. And so that first year, my very best was very different than it was 8 years later. Yeah. And that's the whole thing with these agreements too. Doing your very best is the way to live the agreements. But doing your best will vary, whether it's your first day making a commitment to them, or years later when you found some little subtleties that you never discovered before. But before we jump wholeheartedly into doing your best, any more sharing around the making assumptions? Yes.
As a musician, I would also say, eventually you have to stop practicing, play, and write your own song.
Because that's another step in doing your best.
Could you repeat that, please?
They could hear you.
What, could you repeat that?
So eventually you have to stop practicing, you have to just play and to play your own song.
Oh, I see.
Because that's, where the real creative energy comes.
What I wanted to say was, so when you live the agreements, everything that you agreed to previously that isn't in synchronicity with these new agreements shows up. And when it shows up, then you have the opportunity to clean it up. And you have the method to do it. Because that's also part of the Toltec wisdom, are the two masteries of dreaming and stalking. And stalking isn't a sex thing, it's watching yourself being yourself.
Are you saying stalking like STA?
Okay, stalking, but stalking
Sure.
yourself.
Sure.
Stalking yourself, watching yourself.
Like paying attention to what you're paying attention to.
And the term stalking is derived, I love this, it's what it's because it's the way a jaguar or any large cat would go after its prey. With great patience, great control, and persistence. Yeah. So, and it doesn't have to be anybody who's watched a cat, be they a large one or a small domestic one. It is amazing to me how long they can stay in one position, not quite immobile. There's usually some kind of little twitch going on, and that tells me they really are controlling the urge to pounce. Yeah. And that's what the stalking, that's what the stalking is.
And dreaming is meditation with intention. That's all. It's not a big deal. You do it because you choose to. Maybe you have a practice, a meditation practice, but you go into that practice with a sort of a decision as to what you're going to be looking for in your mind, or you go in with a decision to be silent with yourself and see what shows up. And so through those two ways of being, you really get to change your agreement. Because now you have, and this is what happened to me, I was like, what? All of the things my parents said are not true? I was like, how could that be? And what happened was that as I began to live these agreements, these new ones, all the rest of it just showed up for me, and I was able to make choices as to what I wanted to continue to keep with me and what I wanted to let go of. And my life is a different life. One of the things that my children say to me often is, Mom, are you okay? You're so quiet.
Yeah.
Because I am.
again, that place of being silent, that space to allow yourself to choose what you're speaking, what you're thinking, what you're living, is really crucial. Because we're always talking to ourselves. Even if you can't hear me, I'm always talking to myself. And it's being aware of what I'm saying to myself that is crucial to ferreting out those agreements that don't serve me, don't serve the light and the love that I am, the light and the love that each of you are. Yes?
So that means you must have a basis for accepting certain agreements and rejecting other agreements, right? A basis.
The basis, the parameter that I use, I have to go back. It's kind of, most of the time it's the solar plexus. There is a sensation, a feeling, an intuitive hit, whatever. We all have a different way of detecting what feels like it's in alignment with who we truly are.
So your own feeling,
That's right. And okay, your own good feeling about yourself. A lot of the agreements that are made seem to be made out of a place of fear. So if the agreement is being made out of an emotion like fear, or an emotion like anger, or an emotion of sadness, if there's some kind of sensation that isn't promoting the highest and best and most divine presence that you can be on planet Earth, uniquely as you, it's not an agreement that's going to serve you. And if it doesn't serve you, it's not going to serve the rest of humanity. And so I'm a little preaching here. I feel one of my very strong beliefs is that if each of us marched to the tune of the drummer that was in our head, in our heart, in our solar plexus, we would be marching in peace. We would be marching in joy and love and beauty. We would have absolutely no reason to want to do anything violent against anyone or anything else, because we've agreed that we can be us. We can be genuine. We can be anyway, back to the doing our best. I'm down off that box. Yeah, so doing your best is kind of what we would say as practitioners, as science of mind followers, treat and move your feet. Treat and move your feet.
What is that?
Well, what it means is you know what you want, you know the truth in any particular situation, but if, and this is coming from someone, if I were here alone, not distracted by all the beauty and the energy in this room, I could sit in a stool like this and simply be. I could just spend an hour with goodbye, maybe two, especially if I was on my deck listening to the birds. I could just sit here, and I could do treatment after treatment. And a lot of what I was treating for would happen because it had very little to do with a specific action I needed to take. But when I'm trying to manifest in the material world, treat and move your feet means I've done the treatment, I know it's mine, I'm expecting it to be right, actually I know it's right there, I'm just not seeing it yet. But I get up and do something, I take an action that indicates it's already there.
So like know it and do it?
Yep. Yep. It's kind of that, the way John put it a few weeks ago was, open yourself to the unexpected and then expect it. Well, you're treating for something you expect, and then you move as though it already were. That's my, if anyone else has a different take on treat and move your feet, yes, Jim?
I think it's also taking responsibility for it, so that
Yes.
you're not just thinking it, you are doing, taking one step towards it, at least every day.
Well, and it's not passive waiting for, we don't study that kind of thing like the God gives us the gift. It's balance the scales and you get rewards and punishment at all. I don't mean it like that, but if you're just praying about it and you're not doing anything to get yourself to where that lines up in the world, I tend to do more than I treat.
Yes, Tom?
I'd like to expand on the word, because
Like which word?
well, I'm trying to expand on the concept of the word, because, speaking is only one thing. I mean, I can dream my music, I can dream a whole movie, there's a visual aspect to my word, and a sound aspect, and a smell aspect, and I don't necessarily have to be pre-planning or pre-paving. I can simply be painting the picture or playing the music, if I conceptualize it into words, and that's something else, but I'm just saying, there's a bigger way to look at it.
Did everybody hear what Tom said?
No.
Okay, what he was saying is, back in the beginning of the class, when we talked about impeccability of the word, we were saying that the word is the power, the creative force that is within each of us, and that's why we want to be impeccable with the word, because of the inherent power of it. And what Tom was saying is, he expands beyond the concept of a word such as the written word, the spoken word, or even the thought, and takes it into a visualization, a sensation, and all of that is part of the creative energy. I think the concept of simply calling it word is probably straight out of the Bible. I think in John someplace that was
The word.
was the word, yeah. But no, Tom is absolutely right. It's not simply a word. And I know in treatment, when I'm doing treatments, I often pause, go into that silence, and see what I want. That's, so I think, yes, thank you. It isn't just the word as the dictionary and the thesaurus.
It's that
Have them
we
like-
want the impeccable word.
So back to doing our best. That's the way to get all of the agreements working. And it's really important for us not to go into that perfectionist place that some of us occasionally dwell, and understand that, like I said with the musical instruments, my best, the first day I picked up a clarinet was very different than 8 years later when I was playing. Today I'm teaching this class. I'm doing the best I can with the knowledge I have and the studying I've done. If I had taught the class a month ago, just based on my practice without having really looked closely at it, I would have still done my best, but it would have been different. And if I continue my practice and my work, if I retaught it in a year, again, I would do my best, but it might look very different. But here's the real thing about doing your best. Whatever it looks like, whatever the task at hand is, if when you finish it, you know you've done your best, you can't judge yourself. If in each moment You do the best you can, given whatever is happening in your life and in the universe in that moment. Judgment goes out of the window. And once judgment goes out of the window, the victim goes out of the window, and what's left? That's it. That amazing light being. Yeah, that being of love. That's what's left. When in each moment you do the best you can.
Yes, thank you. What about the number 5? No, living the fifth agreement.
Okay, well, I did not put that up there.
Oh.
We have some advanced Toltec students.
I see.
Who know that there are, after writing the 4 agreements, a number of years later, one came out called the 5th agreement. And, okay, I've not spent a lot of time there. It's basically telling us to be skeptical. And I'll share my story is I resisted going there because I spent so much of my life as a cynic and a skeptic that I didn't want to test those waters. Now that I understand, being a skeptic isn't being a cynic. It's not being skeptical, thinking everyone is lying to you, but it's listening, observing, and being very discerning about what you believe from the people in the world around you. That's my understanding from my conversations with Michelle.
I like discernment.
Well, I think by using the word, and this is where I now have an understanding, I think by using the word skeptical, it was suggesting you would start asking questions. You know, which goes back to when we ask questions, we're not making assumptions.
So I'll say this, the 5th agreement was written by Don Miguel Ruiz and one of his sons, who now follow the family tradition of teaching the Toltec wisdom. And it's an agreement based in current times, whereas the other 4 are more, I would say, universal. And I was thinking just today, as I happened to get my nails done and I watch television because I don't own a television, and I was watching the commercials for people who are running for office. And I was so glad that I understood what it was to be skeptical. Because that's the world we're living in right now. You just, you have to vet everything probably yourself and let it filter through, for me, my intuition, before I can believe anything right now, that's being sent to me from outside of me. So I think it's what the result of the media and the internet and everything that bombards us is to really just like lay back and not to buy in. So it seems that it's really appropriate at this moment.
So just one last, and thank you, Michelle.
Oh, you're
Yes,
welcome.
because she lives the 5th agreement also, so that, and I just realized I kind of was distracted in not listening to you, and I apologize. Yeah, I regret that. Yeah. Anyway, that's my, I just suddenly, whew, okay. So what I'm going to leave you with are a couple of requests. First, the first request is consider making the commitment to live the 4 agreements. Don't make the commitment lightly, consider it before making it, because making that commitment can become a way of life. And the consequence of that way of life is love and joy, and not all of us seem to be ready for that. in the larger planetary dream. So consider making the commitment to the 4 agreements. And then I invite you to dream a new dream.
What?
Dream a new dream.
Oh.
Not just in your personal life, but as you dream your personal life, dream a new dream for the planet. One of the little suggestions, little exercises that I loved right at the end of the book, and I'm going to ask you to do this. Close your eyes, relax. Just kind of relax with those eyes closed. And what I'm going to ask you to do is not immediately open them, but take a moment, and when you open your eyes, see everyone and everything differently than you did when you closed your eyes. And just imagine if when you open them, you saw beams of light and streams and flows of love coming from every person, every being, everything in this room. So when you're ready, open and see the world with new eyes.